Hello and welcome to our conference podcast series, Power of Potential, sharing experiences from Universal Design for Learning journeys. So I'd like to start by welcoming you to our UDL podcast series in advance of the conference, and thank you so much for joining us, Richard. We're really happy that we're able to have this conversation today. I just wonder if you could introduce yourself and tell us about where you are today and why you're involved in doing this podcast to begin with, if that's okay with you.
Oh, sure. Yes. Well, I'm Richard Jackson, and I'm an associate professor of special education at Boston College. And I have been, this is actually my 45th year at Boston College.
Wow.
Been a long time and seen a lot of developments over the years. My role at Boston College from 1979 until about 1990 was running, directing, and programs to prepare professionals to work with blind and visually impaired and multiply impaired students. We had programs of national significance that prepared with heavy government funding special educators and rehabilitation personnel. Did that for many, many years. And the powers that be at the university determined that our programs in low incidence disabilities were heavily dependent on external funding and not sustainable in the long run. Although I have to say my projects were quite successful. There was a really fortuitous event in my life that happened around 1998, 1999, and that was I was invited to give a talk at CAST, the Center for it's not interesting. It's known as CAST now, and we kind of forget what it was. It was the Center CAST, the Center CAST. Okay, Applied Special Technologies. How's that?
Wow.
CAST is the Center for Applied Special Technologies, and initially, CAST was devoted to leveraging technology to increase independence and access for students, children with disabilities. And in the late 80s and through the early 90s, CAST was formulating the theory that undergirds their practice of using technology to support learners with disabilities. Now, in my talk, I also had the opportunity to talk about my own experiences as a person growing up with blindness, visual impairment, and hearing impairment as well, and talked about some of my early influences with affordance theory, James Gibson's affordance theory, which kind of talked about we directly experience the environment by engaging in the environment and extracting from the environment information that helps us make sense. So, for example, if I look off into the distance, I see a gradient on the ground, increasing density of the texture on the ground. I see the horizon, and then I see the sky. So my nervous system and my whole body is oriented to scan the environment and extract from the environment what affords or gives me opportunity to move. And that's profoundly influenced me because I grew up as a person with low vision, and I was always trying to figure out how people saw and how they made sense of their world, because I saw myself as really being impaired and having my own engagement with the world impeded. It was so, and I in my own research as a doctoral student at Columbia University, I postulated the concept of a sensory barrier. That's what I had to overcome, was this sensory barrier. So I was always looking for how the environment might be enhanced or modified so that what's informative about the environment could be directly perceived. So I was kind of ready for what turned out to be UDL theory. And so getting around to UDL theory is that we really could just look at the environment, the classroom environment, the resources used in that environment as in terms of what affordances, how the environment resonates with the learner. And we see in the traditional curriculum that the classroom and learning environment is just riddled with barriers. And so what CAST was doing at the time was proposing a set of principles that would just open up the environment, make it reveal those affordances or create affordances using technology. So that just blew me away. I was just, wow, here's a bunch of people at CAST that just really get it. They have the big idea. They're not talking about all the problems that people with disabilities have. You're really saying the problems are in the environment, and the problems are in the tools and the resources that we use when we try to engage with others in the learning process. So the big, getting to my big point is that CAST invited me to join CAST, and I was a tenured professor at Boston College at the time, and I had three little ones coming along and very concerned about their education, and I was hopeful that they would all get scholarships at Boston College, which they did, by the way.
Fantastic.
As time went on. And so we negotiated an agreement where I became CAST's first senior research scientist. So there's a number of senior research scientists at CAST now, and I was the first at the time, and I had a consultation of working with CAST just one day a week. And as we wrote projects together, I was able to devote more time with my students in summers for research in connection with CAST. So I think the huge opportunity for UDL in its ascendancy really came with the our federal government's investment in UDL as a solution for bringing special education into the 21st century. That is, our Congress had passed a law that required access to the general education curriculum, not just a special education that would be intended to fix or remediate or correct disabilities or mitigate or minimize disabilities, but a law that would say the general curriculum is for everybody. It's an American ideal. It's for everybody. And so the curriculum is riddled with inherent barriers, limiting access, participation, and the opportunity to make progress. So what could reduce those barriers? What could change those barriers? Well, it seemed to me and my colleagues at CAST at the time, this is in the late, this around 1999, the only way to do this would be to embrace universal design for learning and act on the curriculum directly and pay less attention to the deficits of individuals with disabilities. So CAST, we talked about, it isn't the individuals that have the disabilities, it's the curriculum that's disabled. The curriculum itself is disabled. And so
Absolutely.
exciting, really exciting time for me is that in 1999, we proposed a major project to establish a center, a national center that would provide the nation with guidance on actually how to implement curriculum access by applying the principles of universal design. So that gave rise to a five-year project with multiple partners. The project was based at CAST, but at Boston College, where I was primarily, I directed the teaching practices group. And with my students and CAST colleagues, we developed a number of publications and technical reports and briefs on doing just that, providing technical assistance guidance documents. So that's so what I've been doing at Boston College since '99 is teaching universal design and preparing leaders at the doctoral and postdoctoral level to disseminate and implement universal design nationally.
Wow, thank you, Richard. I've you might not have, well, you won't have necessarily heard, but I've just been scribbling notes down because that's absolutely fascinating, and there's so much in what you've said around sort of affordance theory and the power of having your own personal experiences as well as your extensive professional experience, and this really interesting idea around how we perhaps might have previously viewed disability as being something within the individual rather than the environment around it, and shifting away from that and seeing the barriers and experiencing the barriers outside. And I love the term "the curriculum is disabled, not the individual." That just is a really powerful tagline there. So thank you. If it's okay, I'm going to move on to some of the questions, if that's okay with you, Richard.
Absolutely, sure.
Some of them I think you've kind of covered. But I just wondered for our listeners, if you had to put things really simply and really succinctly, in your own words, what is universal design for learning?
Yes, great, great question. I think the people that get into universal design for learning undergo a sort of a psychological transformation, an aha thing, like, wow, I never really considered that. What is this? This is transformative. And some have called, well, universal design is a paradigm shift. So what would it be away from? What's really so unique and different and powerful about it? And I think, we call it a theoretical framework, call it a conceptual framework, we call it a mindset, because it has much to do with the dispositions of practitioners. Do I have a disposition that's highly clinical and professional, and I really aim for precise diagnosis, and I'm very familiar with the characteristics that align with the diagnosis. So when I encounter an individual with a disability, I have this whole set of diagnostic expectations. And that's what I see when I look at the individual. So many people that are in practice have kind of grown up with that perspective. Then along comes UDL and says, everybody has an opportunity to engage with everybody should have an opportunity to engage with the community and experience the benefits of public education. So what we've been trained to think about is that what used to be called aptitude times treatment interaction, that we would measure a person's potential and then we would match their experiences to suit their measured potential. Well, we learned that kids rise to the expectations of their teachers. And this resulted in separate schools, separate classrooms, separate expectations. And what UDL says is that aptitude is enormously variable, and there's many categories of human characteristics. There's no way that we can fine tune our diagnostic capabilities and really prescribe exactly what a learner needs. So if we just think that it's all in the classroom and we can just open up opportunities by providing many ways of getting at the information through listening, through looking, through feeling, through moving around, and we can, as we engage with instruction, there are many ways that we can show what we're learning, and then there are potentially many ways that we could connect with others or with materials and technologies that just feel right for us, that we've sort of invested ourselves and we've become self-regulated and metacognitive. We understand how we're connecting with our peers in the classroom and how we're connecting with the instruction. And just now, of course, technology has had everything to do with making universal design for learning a reality. You know, we've down through the years we've debated, can you do UDL without technology? Well, yes, you can, but not very well.
Okay.
It's too hard. It's too hard without technology. And in my lifetime, the technology has made all of the difference. Just to say, you know, in 1980, I couldn't do anything by myself, and I needed supports for everything, going to the library, preparing for my classes, all kinds of exotic supports that I developed over the years, growing through special education myself and my own university preparation. But today, I don't need to leave my office, and I have full access to text, journals, and books and reports, and in multimedia form. That's not just special for me. It's available for everybody. But the benefits I derive just with really level the playing field for me far more than I've ever experienced in my lifetime.
That's
So
really interesting, Richard,
yeah,
because I
it's
think
amazing.
that I'm just reflecting back on what you're saying, and I guess if I think about my experiences at university and with the age that I am, I think I probably take the existence of this technology completely for granted. So I think if you're not aware of how it's developed, you might just not be aware of the potential and the impact that it is having already or could have in the future, with the further development of technology, artificial intelligence, all of these things that continue to support inclusivity in lots of different ways.
Yes, you are what we call a true digital native.
Yes.
And I'm so you're you know, after digital AD, and
Yeah.
I'm BC, before
BC.
computers.
I love that. That's great. Okay, so I'm just aware of time, although I could listen to what you're saying for hours. It's really fascinating. I think I'd like to skip a question, and I'd like to go and ask you, why do you think or feel that universal design for learning is so important? Why should we all know about it? Why should we all care about it? Why is it important?
Yes, I think it's it's based on a sense of human rights and equal opportunity, and it has a degree of positivity to it that it has a lot to do with human potential and human thriving, well-being, as opposed to oh, coming back to what I said about diagnosis and
Mhm.
tracking and streaming learners into what we considered pathways, prescribed pathways. So I think in globally in societies that are emerging around the world, people have a range of concepts of inclusion, inclusivity, and opportunity, and we're UDL kind of is a mind like a mind frame that gives us confidence and courage to move forward.
Mm.
Sounds all kind of vague, and I
I
don't.
don't think I think that's really clear. I think making the links to kind of um, you mentioned rights and kind of empowerment and being included, but also the human thriving. That's not vague. That's really clear that it's linked to us being able to thrive and also our well-being. I think those are some really key ethics and values that we perhaps hold as educators or perhaps institutions hold as their mission statements and populations and communities, and also that they can be driven by that. So I think that's a really I think that's a great answer and not vague. I'm just wondering then, thinking about where we've come from, because you've given an excellent narrative covering the kind of last, albeit brief, covering the last 45 years and the emergence of your personal experiences, the work that CAST were doing, and the law change in the USA, where it was access to curriculum, it being the American ideal. Where would you like to see UDL go in the future? What are your hopes and aspirations for the future of UDL?
Oh, that's a wonderful question, and of course I would be thinking about this all the time. I kind of regard myself as a theoretician. It was wonderful to be engaged with UDL in the early years and to be working with CAST. And UDL has moved from the sort of what's good, what's necessary for some people becomes really good for everybody. So it's that old curb cut
Mm.
idea, good for wheelchairs and great for rollerbladers as well. That's a concept that has uh, just mushroomed, and UDL is now spreading out to every area or every representation of diversity. In fact, UDL theory today is really saying we shouldn't say diversity. We should just talk about variability. We're not we don't define a person by how far they are from the typical. We say we're all variable, and variability itself is normal. So uh, UDL is at risk for explaining everything, and some philosophy of science people will say, well, if you have a theory that explains everything, well, it doesn't really explain anything, and it sort of loses its usefulness. So, if we think about UDL in if it explains every aspect of the human condition, then we say, well, what's a UDL breakfast and what's a UDL workout and things like that. So,
Mm.
as UDL expands across the world, many wonderful, great implementations. It becomes so all-encompassing that it loses its precision, and it loses its the idea that it is a true shift, paradigm shift, and a new way of looking at human experience. So uh, I I I don't want UDL to veer too far away from disability. And
Okay.
for me, disability is real. I'm a deaf-blind person. I've lived with disabilities all my life, and the difficulties I have, and to some extent overcome, and very much because of technology. I don't want to make myself into a heroic person. I'm the beneficiary of circumstances, but disability is real. It's not just mere social construction. So if we move too far into disability as just a sort of cultural difference, and we should be accepting uh, people for disabilities for how we see them socially. Well, that doesn't quite do it for me. I'm My disability has been an enormous resource for my thinking and my approach with working with and helping others. So I'm taking UDL in a new, not a well, building on where UDL came from, back to the affordances. And I think that we can understand human variability through the lens of embodied cognition. So that's where I'm going. I think that we can really understand the challenges people have as they encounter the environment through embodiment. And I think it's time that we go beyond the decade of the brain. The decade of the brain was the cognitive revolution, through the 90s, and I am more than my brain. And I'm
Absolutely.
my body and all of my systems that work coherently or incoherently, but to understand or to understand human characteristics in relation to the world. I think embodied cognition is loaded with insights, and I expect to exploit those insights going forward.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Richard. It's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to listen to you talking about UDL. It's given me loads to think about, and some things I want to go away and read actually on the back of what you've talked about. And I appreciate that we've limited you with time, because we can't have unfortunately a podcast that goes on for hours, because we do need to put the boundaries in. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about it. It's absolutely fascinating. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Richard,
No,
before
just
we draw to
thank
a
you very much.
close?
I really enjoyed the conversation, and feel like I'm delighted with the opportunity to kind of share my long-term perspectives and my emerging thinking here. So
Brilliant.
delightful being with you here, Kirsty.
Oh, thank you very much.